Before Adolf Hitler came to power in 1933, the Jews of Europe lived in relative comfort, sprinkled across the continent in small towns and large cities. They had no idea of what was to come.
I'm a fatalist. I believe when you were born, everything was written in the book of what is going to happen in your life. I was born in Düsseldorf, Germany, in July of 22. My first years were very good.
I was born in Loszice, Poland. My parents were poor, so were about 90% of the population in town.
We lived in Italy. My parents managed a hotel in Lucin Piccolo, which is a small island in the Adriatic.
The town was called Gorlig, and it had 9,000 inhabitants, of whom 27 were Jewish. But they didn't live in clusters. I mean, they lived among their neighbors.
We lived in a very nice house on a very nice street and had lots of trees on there. We were taken care of by a maid, which was nothing unusual in Europe.
Jewish life began to change, slowly and steadily. First, in 1933, the Nazis organized a day-long boycott of Jewish businesses. 2 years later, the Nuremberg laws were enacted to strip the Jews of their citizenship and all the rights it entailed.
For the Jews, they had no more rights. They could not do anything. They weren't allowed to do any shopping. They weren't allowed to travel. They were like prisoners in their own home.
All stores owned by Jewish people had to be closed.
We were not able to continue in school. My mother had lost her job because she was Jewish. The landlord's daughter, I wasn't allowed to play with her anymore, and he evicted my grandmother.
I think that my parents had found paradise on that island. I can't imagine that they ever intended to leave. But in 1938, Mussolini started to enact anti-Jewish laws probably so as not to antagonize Hitler.
Hitler hated the Jews, and all the men around him could only work with him if they hated the Jews. We could do nothing but sit around and trying to leave Germany.
On the night of November 9th, 1938, Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass, a wave of state-sponsored terrorism swept across Germany and Austria. It was a telltale sign of the danger Jews faced.
I was asleep when all of a sudden I woke up because the whole bed was shaking. And my mother was sitting on the bed. And I said, "What's the matter?" And the room was so light, it was like sunlight. She said, "The synagogue's burning." They went to every house and every apartment and to every business. And everything was smashed to smithereens.
It was very scary. They didn't let us go out, and when we listened to the radio, that had to be very quiet. Our whole family life changed.
You don't know what was going to happen to you. You had no idea. They didn't. I don't think they knew themselves what was going on.
And I can see it when I close my eyes. I can still see it. The police had big buses, which were open on the outside and had benches inside. They used it for orchestras, to move a lot of people. And I can see that bus going through the city and all the Jewish men sitting in it. I can see that now as if it was yesterday. The thing at the time, it was early. Don't forget, it was 1938. They weren't ready with the concentration camps. So after 6 weeks, the men came home. But you could hardly recognize them. They had lost so much weight. They were sleeping on straw. They had skin infections. It was terrible.